The Islamic Republic of Iran and the Republic of Sudan have resumed their diplomatic relations following contacts between their high-ranking officials in the recent months and in line with their national interests. The two countries have agreed to expand their friendly ties based on mutual respect to their sovereignty, equality, mutual interest, and peaceful coexistence. Iran and Sudan have also agreed to deepen their ties in different areas that will serve the interests of both nations and conducive to regional peace and stability. And to discuss the expanding friendly ties between Iran and Sudan, we are joined here in the studio by Sudan's ambassador to Iran, His Excellency Abdulaziz Hassan Saleh. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador, to our program.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Iran-Sudan ties.
Iran and Sudan recently restored their ties, and they have opened a new phase in their bilateral relations. Now, can you first tell us the strategic importance of ties between Tehran and Khartoum?
Ties between Sudan and the Islamic Republic of Iran are long-standing. We have much in common, as both countries are Muslim and members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Non-Aligned Movement. In the past, the ties between the two countries were well developed. However, they were severed in 2016 and remained so for 8 years under the previous Sudanese regime, which was overthrown in a popular uprising in 2019. As you know, the diplomatic ties between the two countries were restored about 3.5 months ago. On July 30th, 2024, the Sudanese embassy reopened in Tehran. The Iranian embassy also reopened in Port Sudan. Bilateral ties between the two countries have developed rapidly in this short period, especially as they resumed from where they left off rather than starting from scratch. We are striving to advance quickly to overcome the 8-year hiatus so that we can achieve the aspirations of the peoples of both countries.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for that explanation. Now, in this development of ties between Iran and Sudan, recently Sudan's Minister of Economic Planning, Jibril Ibrahim, visited Tehran, and he met high-ranking officials, including his counterpart in Iran, Abdul Nasser Hemmati. Can you elaborate on some of the agreements reached during the visit by the minister here in Tehran?
The visit of Sudan's Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Jibril Ibrahim Mohammed, took place upon a formal invitation from Iran's Minister of Economic Affairs and Finance, Abdul Nasser Hemmati. It was a very important visit, and it was preceded by 2 visits from the former Foreign Minister, the last of which was to attend the swearing-in ceremony of His Excellency President Masoud Pezeshkian. These visits, especially that of Minister of Finance Jibril Ibrahim, laid the right foundation for the development of economic, trade and investment ties between Sudan and Iran. During his visit, Dr. Jibril met Dr. Hemmati and they held fruitful and successful talks, reaching agreements on many understandings and outstanding issues. Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Jibril, also met Iran's Minister of Industry, Mines and Trade, where they also agreed to accelerate the pace of cooperation. They also agreed to establish a Sudanese-Iranian holding company to promote trade cooperation between businessmen from both countries. This company will consist of businessmen from both countries and will not be a government company. All businessmen from Iran and Sudan will be able to hold shares in this company and its capital, thereby increasing the pace of mutual cooperation. The two sides also agreed to open a Sudanese commercial center in Tehran and an Iranian commercial center in Sudan. All of this is aimed at enhancing cooperation and strengthening ties between the chambers of commerce of Iran and Sudan. Additionally, it was agreed that the two countries would exchange visits of technical delegations, including specialists and experts in the field of economy, trade, mines, and agriculture. As you know, Sudan is an agricultural country and needs Iranian expertise in this field. The visit of Sudan's Minister of Finance and Economic Planning was very important. At the end of his visit and before his departure, he also met Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi. This meeting was also important and fruitful, where they agreed on many economic issues that will be completed through diplomatic channels.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for that. Now, as you know, you have been in Iran for several months now, and you have seen Iran is quite advanced technologically. And in fact, in terms of nanotechnology, Iran is one of the top 10 countries in the world. How do you think these two countries can work together in this area of technology, biotechnology, and all that?
As I have already mentioned, Sudan is an agricultural country with large swathes of land suitable for farming. The country is also rich in water resources, as the Nile River and its tributaries cover large areas of Sudan. Sudan also has many mineral resources such as gold, iron, copper, magnesium, and phosphate. All these natural resources need technology to be effectively utilized, and Iran is a country from which we can greatly benefit because of its capabilities in the fields of technology and nanotechnology. We also need the Iranian expertise in the fields of economy and industry. Many of our processing factories need Iran's expertise and its advanced agricultural equipment and machinery. Furthermore, in the fields of medicine, pharmaceutical industry, higher education, and scientific research, we have many students who have studied in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Therefore, we aspire to benefit from Iran's expertise in these fields and from its advanced technology.
Mr. Ambassador, as you mentioned, in terms of trade, these two countries have a lot to offer, and as you said also, Sudan has agricultural land and Iran has industrial capacity. So how do you plan to use these immense potentials of both countries during your tour?
As I previously mentioned, Sudan is a large country with a strategic location as it overlooks the Red Sea, which is a geopolitical advantage. Sudan also serves as a bridge between the Arab countries and the African continent. Sudan is a country that belongs to both the African continent and the Arab world. It is also rich in natural resources, including water. And as you know, the issue of food security and water has become an international concern. Sudan also has mineral resources like gold and skilled, educated human resources. Public and higher education in Sudan is very advanced, and we have scientists in all fields, both inside and outside of Sudan. Sudan's foreign policy is based on the exchange of benefits and interests. Therefore, there are high investment opportunities in Sudan. The ongoing war in the country will end soon, God willing. In the post-war reconstruction, development and rehab process, Sudan needs the help of the brotherly and friendly countries, as well as international organizations and academic and research institutions. Therefore, our relationship with the Islamic Republic of Iran is divided into two parts. One related to the present and the other to the near future, God willing, after the war ends. Sudan has many products to offer to different countries around the world, especially Iran. As I represent my country in the Islamic Republic of Iran, we have agricultural and mineral products that we can offer to Iran as part of mutual cooperation and shared interests. Iranian companies and businessmen can invest in Sudan with opportunities in the infrastructure sector, including building roads and bridges and reconstructing buildings and public facilities destroyed in the war. Sudan can also provide the Islamic Republic with many agricultural products it needs. Sudan has a large livestock population and provides meat. We can also farm fruits, including mangoes and bananas, as as well as sesame, gum, Arabic, Sudanese peanuts, and Sudanese long and short staple cotton, which are very famous. All of these are investment opportunities. There are also opportunities to invest in the petroleum sector. While part of Sudan's large oil reserves were taken by the brotherly country of South Sudan after its secession, there are still opportunities for investment in various fields, including oil and minerals in the north of Sudan. Sudan has a long coastline on the Red Sea, stretching 850 kilometers and shared borders with many African countries, including landlocked ones that have no ports to stay connected to the outside world. Therefore, all the landlocked African countries can trade through Sudanese ports. The Red Sea is also rich in fishery resources that haven't yet been exploited. Consequently, there are significant opportunities for cooperation between Sudan and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Any friendly country can cooperate with Sudan without harming it or its people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now, I would like to discuss about regional issues of Palestine, the issue of Palestine. As we know, Iran and Sudan are two major Islamic countries. And right now, the foremost issue in the world of Islam is the issue of Palestine. How is Iran working together with Sudan to assist the Palestinians who are suffering right now in Gaza due to the genocidal war by the Israeli regime, and to ensure that Palestine is free and with Quds as its capital in future?
2 days ago, an Arab Islamic summit was held in Riyadh and attended by high-ranking Sudanese delegation led by His Excellency President of the Transitional Sovereign Council, First Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. The President of the Transitional Sovereign Council was accompanied by the Foreign Minister, Ali Youssef. A high-ranking Iranian delegation also participated in the summit. Sudan's stance on the Palestinian cause is clear, condemning all violations committed by Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza and other Palestinian territories. For sure, Sudan, as a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League, and Iran, as a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, expressed their visions for a solution to the Palestinian cause at the Riyadh summit. Sudan calls for the implementation of all legitimate international resolutions. The Islamic Republic of Iran also supports the Palestinians' right. We hope that the recommendations of the joint Arab-Islamic Summit will result in achieving the Palestinian people's right to a life of dignity and establishment of their independent state according to legitimate resolutions, the summit's decisions and the Arab decisions made in previous summits.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And viewers, we now take a short break before we continue our discussion with Sudan's ambassador to Iran. Stay with us.
Iran-Sudan ties.
Welcome back to our interview with the Sudanese ambassador to Tehran, His Excellency Abdulaziz Hassan Saleh. Now, Mr. Ambassador, we know right now Sudan is in the headlines, maybe we can say for the wrong reasons, because of the war, unfortunately, which started in 2023. According to the news reports, is that there was some disagreement between the Sudanese National Army and the Rapid Support Forces. Now, can you tell us really what are the factors behind this very unfortunate war in Sudan?
This war erupted at dawn on Saturday, April 15th, 2023. Unfortunately, a group which was affiliated with the Sudanese government and army was the party that ignited this war. The leader of this rebel militia was a deputy of Sudan's head of state. However, the group was secretly planning to rebel against the legitimate authority and leadership and President Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Along with the army and other military forces, this group was guarding government institutions and facilities and the army headquarters. This made it easier for this group to try to seize power and wage war. This group surprised their comrades who were also guarding the government institutions, killing some and capturing others. This is how the war erupted. This militia and its leader, Hamedti, were seeking to seize power. He expected this to be accomplished within 2 hours. He even appeared on TV and claimed that they had made advances and that the president would be arrested and brought to trial. However, the valiant resistance of the Presidential Guard and the Sudanese army, along with the widespread popular rejection from most segments of the Sudanese people, thwarted this plot. This war aims to erase Sudan's identity and culture and install foreign elements from outside Sudan. They bring mercenaries and pay them to erase the Sudanese identity and culture. It's a war against the Sudanese people because since the first days, Sudanese civilians have been targeted, expelled from their homes and their properties looted. Banks and government institutions have also been looted and destroyed. Hospitals' medical equipment has been looted as well. The militia has also looted universities, institutes and schools, as well as the central bank and the banknotes print houses. Even museums and places of worship, including mosques and churches, were looted. The militia also captured a group of monks and priests in their places of worship. They also forced young men in the neighborhoods to join them at gunpoint. They later moved to some cities and villages near the capital in Al Jazeera and Darfur and displaced the local people. The world saw the tragedy of El Janina, where its governor was arrested, tortured and killed. His body was also mutilated, with cars passing over it and stones being hurled at it. The world also saw how innocent civilians in El Janina were buried alive in holes dug in large swathes of land. They later went to different cities in Darfur and have imposed a siege on El Fasher. Some 150 attacks were conducted for the seizure of El Fasher, despite repeated calls from the Security Council and the entire world. In the east of Al Jazeera and the areas of Rufa and Al Hilaliya, we saw the genocide of defenseless people. In fact, the crimes of this terrorist militia constitute genocide and crimes against humanity. This group has hired mercenaries and members of terrorist groups that were fighting in the Middle East and in the north and west of Africa. This war is against the Sudanese people, and we urge the free people of the world and the human conscience to condemn these criminal and terrorist acts and to confront them. These acts are not accepted by the human conscience and the free people. We also urge the international community not to apply double standards.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, you've elaborated on the genocidal situation in Sudan and how these RSF militias are committing genocide. Now, Sudanese government officials are accusing the United Arab Emirates explicitly of supporting these RSF rebels committing genocide in Sudan. Now, have you presented evidence to the United Nations to this effect?
The Sudanese government filed a complaint with the Security Council against the UAE because the Sudanese armed forces and the Sudanese government found much evidence that proves the UAE's support for this terrorist militia which kills the innocent people in Sudan. This evidence includes numerous munitions, weapons, equipment and armed vehicles used by this militia. Even food provided to these militants also comes from the UAE in boxes labeled the United Arab Emirates. The UAE has also dispatched drones and sent the militia money to hire mercenaries. Cargo planes were observed unloading their cargo in airports near Sudan's western borders. Inside Sudan, Emirati planes carrying weapons, munitions and vehicles were observed landing in some sandy areas. All of this was documented and submitted as evidence to the Security Council in formal complaints by the Sudanese government, the latest of which was filed on October 11th this year. Then the Sudanese government has evidence proving that the UAE is guilty of supporting the militia that kills Sudanese people. We urge the international community to condemn these acts and the countries that support them, financially, logistically, politically and through the media, as well as those providing safe havens for the leaders of this militia on their territories. We have no issue with the Emirati people. Our problem is with the ruling authority in the UAE that supports this rebel terrorist militia.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, there is a concern among the people of Africa, I mean, within Africa and even within the Muslim world, that Sudan is facing a danger. Because we know Sudan previously was the largest country in Africa before South Sudan seceded. And this secession was incited by Western countries and the Zionist regime. Now, there are reports that the head of RSF, Dagalo, is in close contact with the Israeli regime in this genocidal war against the Sudanese people. How involved is the Zionist regime in this current war against the people of Sudan?
Sudan
has a distinctive geographical location overlooking the Red Sea. Besides this strategic location that connects Arab countries with African countries, Sudan is one of the founding members of the Organization of African Unity, which is now the African Union. Sudan supported African liberation movements as part of its mission towards the brothers in the African continent. Sudan has a large area of about 1 million square kilometers. You and the dear viewers know that there was a war between the north and the south of Sudan that lasted for a long time and ended after a Kenyan brokered comprehensive peace agreement was reached. One of the outcomes of the agreement was that the people in south of Sudan have the right to self-determination. So a referendum was held and South Sudan seceded, but our relationship with our brothers in South Sudan is still that of one people in two countries. The war currently underway in Sudan is fueled by foreign parties and countries. The role played by Israel in this war is very obvious. It acts through the regional country that supports the rebel militia. Israel provides the militia with military and technical support, including communication, radio jamming, and advanced equipment and weapons through the UAE, as I previously mentioned. The Israeli ambitions in Sudan and its aspirations to break it up and install an Israeli loyal government in the country are driven by Sudan's strategic location, which connects the Arab countries with Africa and the Red Sea. Controlling the Red Sea allows one to gain control over the commercial corridor and establish military bases to observe the movements there. Therefore, Israel is closely linked to what's currently taking place in the country.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, since the war started in 2023, there have been several peace initiatives and, peace talks between the Sudanese government and these rebels. The last round of peace talks was held in Geneva, and it ended in failure. What is the reason for this?
Before Geneva, in the first weeks of the war, there was an initiative to negotiate in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, under the sponsorship of the United States of America and the Saudi government. Back then, the Sudanese government's delegation headed to Jeddah and signed the Jeddah Declaration. The rebel militia also signed this declaration, but it did not adhere to it. Even the sponsors and the international community did not force it to adhere to what was agreed upon. Amongst the main provisions of the agreement was the rebels' withdrawal from the people's homes and public facilities, including hospitals and universities that they occupied, and their withdrawal from the cities. They were supposed to gather in a specific area under the supervision of the two sponsoring countries and other states that would have joined this process. This agreement hasn't been implemented so far, and the militia has not adhered to it, nor have they been pressured by the international community to implement it. Therefore, when the Geneva peace talks were proposed, the Sudanese government's stance was explicit. It found no reason to negotiate in Geneva while the Jeddah agreement has not been implemented. They should have adhered to it before taking a new step. As they failed to abide by the first step, there was no need to take another step, especially as the same sponsors of the agreement would be hosting the Geneva talks alongside new parties. Sudan also refused the involvement of new countries, particularly the UAE. The UAE did not take part in the Jeddah talks and wanted to participate in the Geneva talks as a mediator, while it's a supporter of the rebel militia. How could a supporter of the killer become a mediator? Therefore, the Sudanese government stressed that the Jeddah agreement should be implemented before any new negotiations.
Now, our last question, Mr. Ambassador. The Sudanese army has made tremendous progress, according to reports, in its war against these RSF rebels. Do you see the war ending soon and people returning to their homes and the reconstruction process starting in Sudan?
This is a good question. The Sudanese army has made major territorial gains amidst support from the Sudanese people. For instance, a massive protest was held in London by the Sudanese people against a political group allied with the rebel militia and led by the former prime minister, which is called Takaddum. The Sudanese army has made great advances to the extent that some of the leaders of the rebel terrorist militia defected and joined the Sudanese army. The field commander in the east of Al Jazeera, Abu Akla Kikal, announced that he has joined the army in a press conference in Port Sudan. Innocent people who are subjected to violations and crimes flee from one area held by the militia to areas controlled by the Sudanese army. Almost all Sudanese people, public opinion, and the Sudanese media have categorically rejected the presence of this rebel militia in Sudan's political future. If they want to make progress, they should fulfill their commitments under the Jeddah Agreement that was signed in May 2023. Later, the Sudanese people will decide the future of the governance in Sudan through democratic, free and fair elections and choose who should rule the country. The Sudanese army is committed to implementing this desire after the implementation of the Jeddah Declaration and the withdrawal of the militia from people's homes and public facilities, including academic institutions and hospitals. Consequently, an agreement will be reached on how to demobilize this militia. According to its leaders, especially the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and President of the Transitional Sovereign Council, the Sudanese army will hand over the government to a government elected by the Sudanese people who will decide the future and the ruler of Sudan. This is the reality that we currently see. As the army is currently scoring major victories, we wish that the Sudanese people will return to their homeland, stability will be restored to the country, and this rebel terrorist militia will be militarily defeated. Then the Sudanese people will decide the future of the country.
Inshallah. Shukran. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your time today. Viewers, that was the Ambassador of Sudan to Tehran, Mr. Abdulaziz Hassan Saleh. And that brings us to the end of this week's edition of Africa Today. Thanks a lot for watching.